Got sent home from school one day with a shiner on my eye. And fighting was against the rules, and it didn't matter why. When Dad got home, I told that story just like I rehearsed. Then stood there on those trembling knees and waited for the worst. And he said, "Let me tell you a secret about a father's love. A secret that my daddy said was just between us." He said, "Daddies don't just love their children every now and then. It's a love without end, amen." When I became a father in the spring of '81, there was no doubt that stubborn boy was just like my father's son. And when I thought my patience had been tested to the end, I took my daddy's secret and I passed it on to him. And I said, "Let me tell you a secret about a father's love. A secret that my daddy said was just between us." He said, "Daddies don't just love their children every now and then. It's a love without end, amen." Last night I dreamed I died and stood outside those pearly gates, when suddenly I realized there must be some mistake. If they know half the things I've done, they'll never let me in. Then somewhere from the other side, I heard those words again. And they said, "Let me tell you a secret about a father's love. A secret that my daddy said was just between us." And he said, "Daddies don't just love their children every now and then. It's a love without end, amen. It's a love without end, amen."
It's always a beautiful day in the neighborhood that is Valley UU Community. Wherever you are in this room, on the other side of our little campus, out there in Zoom land, listening by YouTube, which is WeTube when we get together, you are part of this community. Whether you've been here for every Sunday since it began, or whether this is the first time you've put your foot in the door, you are part of this community. Who am I? I am Fred Wooden. I'm the interim minister to this community, on its way to its new minister who will be arriving in less than 2 months. Exciting, exciting. And we are here every Sunday, like so many religious communities, to remind ourselves of what matters and why it matters in a world that so often wants us to forget what matters and why. We remind ourselves today that it's an especially beautiful day because it is Father's Day. And if you are a father human, or a grandfather human, or an uncle human, or a brother human, or just someone who fathered someone, whether you were male or not, it is a special day. It is also Juneteenth, that day in 1865 when the last group of enslaved Africans living in Texas were told that they were free. Because not until all are free are any of us free. And strictly speaking, we are not free even now. But we are reminded that whenever we proclaim the worth and dignity and liberty and justice of all human beings, it is Juneteenth, and that too is a beautiful day. So we are here to do all of that in the very small window that is an hour, maybe a little more. And we do it in word and music. And so it's time to hear the music because I've already talked too much. Our prelude today, provided by one of our wonderful members, Linda Horton, will begin to put you in the right place for this Father's Day, Juneteenth Sunday. Linda?
Good morning. Now please join me as we light the chalice with our chalice lighting words. We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love that calls us to work for justice. Thank you.
Good morning. Still hear me? Okay, good morning. I'm Katie Seifert. I'm the Director of Music Ministries, and it is always a joy to be with you this Sunday morning. Let's say good morning to one another, whether we're online, on Zoom, or YouTube, or here in our sanctuary. So first, let's see all those beautiful faces on Zoom. You can give us a wave from the comforts of wherever you're at. Good morning. And then let's show all our friends on Zoom and YouTube who's here in the sanctuary this morning. You can wave back. Good morning. So nice to be with you online and in person. Now we're going to sing our opening song. Please stand in body or in spirit as we sing We Are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're lifters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Good morning. I am Marcy Bodwin, your Director of Faith Formation Ministry here at Valley UU. Now is the time for our Time for All Ages. So any of the children that would like to join me down front, come sit. Make sure you can see this screen. If you're at home and there are any children in the house, now is the time to bring them in front of your device. All right. So I am dedicating today's Time for All Ages story to all of the dads or people who act as dads who think they're funny. And to all the families that just want to cover their ears all the time. Especially my son-in-law, Michael, who told truly terrible dad jokes years before he was even a dad. So can we go back one? We're too far ahead. Back one slide. At the title. All right, so, no, don't worry about it. All right, so the name of this book is My Dad's Jokes Are Very, Terribly, Awfully, Painfully Bad, by Jacob Eckenberger, illustrated by Keith Zaraga. And the book is narrated by this child. And he says, I really like this guy, I really do. But my dad's jokes, Dad, there we go, are just out of control. Every day, it's always the same. You can see them coming. Can you guys see the screen over there? Lincoln and Locke? Can you see? Okay. You can see them coming from a mile away, and I'm worried there's nothing will stop this fad. My dad's jokes are very, terribly, awfully, painfully bad. So then Dad, of course, has some jokes for us. Why did the bicycle need a nap? Because it was too tired. But don't let him see you smile, or, he'll just be here for a while. All right, why did the vampire look sick? Because he was always coughing. Remember, you can't laugh. Not one bit, or else he'll think you're a fan of it. How many apples grow on a tree? Well, all of them do. Eye rolls don't help. And he doesn't even seem to embarrass himself. How does Moses make his coffee? He brews it. All right, let's try something this time. When you see that glimmer in his eye, he's working on another joke. And we're going to act like, we just don't hear it. So here we go. How does a penguin build his house? Igloos it together. Igloos it. Okay, pretty good. No laughing whatsoever, remember? What do clouds wear? Thunderpants. Not underpants, but thunderpants. Okay, deep breath. It's time to take a stand, people. No laughing at these jokes. Dad says spring is here. I'm so excited I might just wet my plants. Okay, don't crack up now. We're doing so well. What's so bad about a nosy pepper? It gets all up in your business. Jalapeno in your business? Oh, how long can he keep this up? What do you call ghost poop? Oh no, we're doomed here. It's a boo-boo. Well, we really did try. There's just something wrong with this guy. I love him, and he has lots of great qualities too. Maybe this is just a phase he's going through. Yeah, it never seems to end, does it? All right, for all the children that are going to class, would you please form Time for All Ages bridges for us? Kids, you're going to go through the glass foyer doors and meet the teachers out on the patio.
Good morning again. I'm Roz Hawkins, and it is my privilege to serve as your worship associate today. We welcome one and all who have joined us in person or in the virtual space, asking that you bring your total self, just as you are, to our service today. To start, I have an announcement and then a few housekeeping items. As part of our official graduation ceremony for Fred, next Sunday, there will be a coffee and cake reception after the service. We need helpers for setting up, serving, and cleanup. There will be a sign-up sheet. It's to my right, right by the tech booth. At the back of the room after the service, I believe Joanne Smith will be there at the table. So Zoomers, you can sign up in the chat window. So please, we'll need help for next Sunday to give Reverend Fred a very good send-off. And then a few housekeeping points. For those young ones who may become fidgety during the service, there's a baby comfort room to your right to use as needed and equipped with a speaker so that you can hear what's going on here in the sanctuary. For those who might need a listening ear, after the service, I am the lay pastoral associate today, and I will be available right here up front if you need to speak to someone, and Carlin Knight will be available in the chat on Zoom. Please look for a message from Carlin online and respond to her personally. We do appreciate your presence in our spaces, and we're glad that you've chosen to spend time with us today. As is our custom, if we have visitors in person, please stand as you are willing or able so that we can more fully acknowledge you. Thank you. Thank you for coming today, and we're glad you're here. After service, please grab a beverage and snack, then join us in the welcome circle in the rear of the sanctuary. While we maintain the breakout rooms online, the Welcome Circles is a great vehicle to get to know us better, meet other members, ask questions, or just share your thoughts. Over the past weeks, Reverend Fred has given sermons on various aspects of parenting, and today will be a similar theme. His sermon entitled, "You Know I'm Gonna Be Like You," last week led me to reflect on the similarities and differences I share with my parents. The younger version of me didn't want to be like my parents at all. They were married at a young age of 17 and 18 respectively, and immediately began a family. My mother was the oldest of 8, my father an only child. Over the next 14 years, there were 6 children born to this union. I was the third. being a middle child is not always fun. I have an older sister and brother, a younger sister, and finally, twin brothers. Both my parents were gifted high school graduates. My mother was primarily a homemaker, completely dedicated to home and family. Although she sometimes worked outside the home after the twins were born, it was for supplemental income. My father was the breadwinner and always ensured his family had a level of physical and financial security. My father retired from McDonnell Douglas, now Boeing, after 37 and a half years as an electronic electrician, having worked on several military aircraft as well as space shuttles. None of the six of us followed either of those paths. My oldest sister is a graduate of Stanford University and had a career as a CPA. My brother, a Harvard dropout, spent most of his career in hotel restaurant management. My younger sister acquired an associate degree and flourished over the past 30 years as a manager for 2 major wholesale appliance companies. One of the twins retired from the Army and now serves as an operational manager for a VA hospital, and the younger twin worked for many years as a catering specialist and has found his gift of gab works well in conflict resolution for a financial company. I have a degree in professional communication and worked in banking for 18 years before ending my career for another 12 years in human resources. Now, as an adult, having raised 3 children of my own, I realize that I have the most important gifts that parents can give. It is the common thread that runs through our lives that we are family. It is the common denominator that overrides any conflict. We're committed to ensure that we remain connected and are a constant source of support for each other. Even when disputes have threatened to divide us, sheer love has kept us bound as family. Despite any differences, our worlds are interconnected and we remain in regular contact. While none of us share career choices, we all share fundamental values instilled in different ways by my parents: family first, respect for education, a strong work ethic, a duty to community, and civic obligation to country. Love abides above all. These are the values I still hold and guide me. However, I reject the patriarchal dominance my father professed, as he often gloated that he was a male chauvinist. My mother never confronted him, at least not in front of us. Today, Reverend Fred's topic, if X marks the spot, why fathering might be the original gender bender. Having grown up under a domineering father, I look forward to hearing another perspective. My parents gave us the best they knew. I've tried to use what worked and not perpetrate the things that I felt did not. I am the product of all of that. My children are now adults, 2 with children of their own. May they also reflect the best of me and pass on the best of themselves to their offspring. May we all continue to grow. May it be so. I want to wish a happy Father's Day first and foremost to my husband, who came into my life when I was 50 years old, and even though we both had grown children, he became a father, not just a father figure, but a father to my grown children who've accepted them as dad. That's a big ask, but he stepped up to the plate, and my children love him as his children love him so. And to all the fathers here today, or anyone in a father's role, happy Father's Day. We celebrate you for all the gifts you shared to make this a better world. Now I welcome you again to Valley UU. Thanks again for sharing your time and attention with us. And I turn it over to Reverend Fred.
So you left me with that Sister Sledge reference, did you? Am I going to work with that? No, I'm going to let that go. Because too often people say, well, my church is like my family. And I want to say, you really want your church to be like your family, right? Think that through. Think that through. But there is a connection, that sense of not just affection, but of obligation. It's not just civic responsibility, it's interpersonal. That we look after one another. I know there's a wise acre observation that it's a good thing we have family, because if we weren't related, we might kill them. But there is a sense of obligation we have about those closest to us. And that's important to the offering, because the offering is when we care for one another. It's not about giving the money, it's about getting the community. And you're going to do it in just a minute. I know Pat Flayhart's waiting to pass the plate. I see her right there. And I know some of you are already trying to reach for that wallet. Wait just a minute. Because I'm going to step away from the weekly offering, because this is the largest audience I get every week. And I ask for money, and I'm okay with that, because I know what it means and what it does. One thing you've never heard is, does the minister give? I do. In fact, I pledged 4% of my salary back to VUU in my time being here, but I'm almost done now, so my pledge is paid. However, I've decided that I want to give a little more, but it's conditional. We are committed to replace our audiovisual system, and it's not going to be cheap. It's going to cost $90,000, 90000, to put everything in place that you need to be in place for everyone you will need to be in place for the next 5 to 10 or more years. We did a lot of research, didn't we? And this is the best way to go. Now, the good news is your capital planning committee is going to pay 75% of that. Yay you, yay them. But what about the other 25%? And how much is that? Well, it's about $23,000. So here's the deal. Remember Ross Perot? That's what he would say. Here's the deal. I am committed to paying the last $1,000 of that $23,000. That's another 4%, by the way. I like that number. Some of you have already kicked in, and it's less than 22 now. It's basically, I'm looking for $19,000 based on what you can give. Now, that can be $10, that can be 20. You can buy an HDMI cord. You look it up online, figure it out, send that amount of money in. Whatever works for you. And we'll keep it in one pot. And then when it's time to pay the rest, it'll go out. Now, I could twist your arm right now and say, well, you know, I'm only working for another 12 days. But that would be wrong. I am good for it even after I stop working for you. That's how committed I am. And this is also not the time on Sunday to be trying to squeeze this piggy bank for more shekels. But since there are about 80 or 90 people paying attention right now, I would be stupid not to be asking right now. But right now is the time when you practice the ritual of generosity. And here's the deal. There he is, Ross Perot, one more time. Whatever you put in that plate, whether it be in the actual plate or in that virtual plate, which you can do by clicking or texting or all those things, right up there, see right there? Start there to help that AV project. And I do mean start. Because the system you will have when it's installed will allow you to reach more people further, better than you've ever reached them before. And if they're going to be out there, you want to be your best self for all of them. Okay, so where are my ushers? Pat's one of them. Aren't you one of them, Pat? Yeah. Who are my other ushers? I see you out there. Good for you. Well, as they used to say it, as I like to say it, there will now be passing out among you as our music takes us through your time of offering.
Thank you, Linda. I have fond memories of my father singing that song growing up. So what is a dad? As we take a moment to center ourselves, I found a poem, who's by someone unknown, that gives a perspective on that. A dad is someone who wants to catch you before you fall, but instead picks you up, brushes you off, and lets you try again. A dad is someone who wants to keep you from making mistakes, but instead lets you find your own way, even though his heart breaks in silence when you get hurt. A dad is someone who holds you when you cry, scolds you when you break the rules, shines with pride when you succeed, and has faith in you always, even when you fail. Father's Day is a day we celebrate our fathers, and it can also be a day where we have complicated feelings. Perhaps your father is with you today and you have a close relationship. Perhaps your father has passed. Perhaps you never met your father, or perhaps you have a complicated relationship with that person. I invite you now to take a moment and envision who that person is in your life that represents what a father is, whether that is your biological father or somebody else. And perhaps you are a father. Today, we honor what that means. And let's join in singing "Sleep, My Child" as we thank and appreciate those fathers in our lives. Sleep, my child, and peace attend you all through the night. I who love you shall be near you all through the night. Soft the drowsy hours are creeping, hill and vale and slumber sleeping. I my loving vigil keeping all through the night. Mother, I can feel you near me all through the night. Father, I know you can hear me all through the night. And when I am your age nearly, still I will remember clearly how you sang and held me dearly all through the night. While the moon her watch is keeping all through the night. While one half the world is sleeping all through the night. Even while the sun comes stealing, visions of the day revealing, breeze a pure and holy feeling all through the night.
I did mention that it's both Father's Day and Juneteenth. And I think I'm going to give a little attention to the latter in this time of prayer, which may sound odd, but all my prayers are odd. They don't sound like prayers at all. And yet they work. And mostly they're stories, and so I have a story to tell. in fact, it was exactly 30 years ago. I was serving in Austin, Texas, taking part in a day of service organized by what was called Austin Interfaith Ministries. So I was there as a clergyman. Others of my colleagues were there, members of my congregation. And the tasks we did every year in the ever-warming Texas spring were home repairs for those who didn't have the means to fix their own homes. In other words, they were poor. And we all know how hard it is just to pay the bills, and when your car breaks down or your house needs repair, you can't do it, so you kind of patch. And so we were all sent off to different houses to do home repair. Now, if you don't remember, I am the least handy man on 2 continents. But I was game, and I was told that I was going to pull off old shingles on an old roof. And I got on the ladder and up on the roof with my hat on and the sweat pouring already off of my brow. I used this little hammer claw thing to start pulling the shingles off, tossing them onto the ground. What I did not know was that the shingles comprised the entirety of the roof, which meant that once I had removed enough shingles, there was not enough to support my presence on the roof. And so suddenly I'm going through the roof, holding on to the roof, dangling, as it were, half in and half out of the house. Now, the good news is it was a shed that had been added. I was not too far up, but I still had no desire to go the rest of the way. With a little bit of help from underneath, someone pushing from below, and me scrambling to gain purchase on what was left of the roof, I got back up on the roof, came back down, a little scraped, but nonetheless whole. The couple for whom we were working had already fired up the grill. And after I finished that task, we all had our lunch. And this man, a man of color, somewhere north of 60, had been sending whiffs of brisket and sausage and ribs into the air. And there we were afterward, chewing greedily and happily upon well-slathered Texas barbecue, along with the coleslaw, the Wonder Bread, and the potato salad. I have forgotten almost every meal I have eaten in my life, but that one remains, partly because I fell through the roof, but mostly now because that man, who could not afford to repair his house, doubtless spent almost that much to feed the crew that fixed his house. And I felt his fathering touch that day. Juneteenth is a reminder that we are all liberated by unseen liberators. They don't usually come marching into town with uniforms and bands. They don't often come with flourishes and trumpets and scrolls unraveled. Sometimes we are liberated in a moment that we did not know we were enslaved. At that moment, I was liberated from my sense that this man was weak and I was strong. He showed me strength in a new way. I was liberated from the notion that I was the benevolent one and he was the recipient, for I was far more nourished at the end of that day than his house was better for my work. Juneteenth is a reminder that every day we are capable of being liberated by acts of small nobility, by men and women, fathers and mothers, by brothers and sisters, siblings and friends, who even if they only light a fire under a charcoal grill, are able to send us into new hopes and new longings. I want you not only to be grateful for the liberation of your father, but for all those other liberating presences. Because Juneteenth isn't about the liberation of enslaved African Americans. It's about the liberation of enslaved white Americans who need to know that we are all enslaved until we are all free. May we pray now for those moments of liberation still to come, and for the smell of barbecue after a hot day on the roof. We have some special music, and as that music plays, you are free and invited to light a candle for someone dear to you or for yourself, to put a stone of remembrance in the sand over there. You can do both, by the way. If there's a name that's precious to you that needs to be remembered, there's a book at the back of the room so it can be inscribed and recalled. Be present to the music in whatever way love offers.
I was actually going to take this time to say a dad joke, but you made it really serious. Should I save it? All right. This is a song that I had wrote. My father was the type of father who didn't say I love you much. So I kind of I wrote it to explain his love to me and how I felt it later on. Father of mine, you gave me the time to see the world through your eyes, as sometimes you saw mine, and then I'd find with the kids I have it's harder than it looks. Please hear me out, my heart has been without compassion and forgiveness. I'd sometimes have a doubt if you'd mind, and then I'd find with the kids I have, it's harder than it looks. 'Cause as a father, look like all sorts of things. 'Cause as a father, love could be a wink, a joke, or a game. It could be his jacket in the rain. As we're getting old, there's so much untold. I find vulnerability could lead me to gold, and I find you. And I could look you in the eye today and say, I love you. 'Cause as a father, love could look like all sorts of things. As a father, love could be a wink, a joke, or a game. It could be his jacket in the rain. 'Cause as a father, love could look like all sorts of things. As a father, love could be a wink, a joke, or a game. Or it could be his jacket in the rain.
Oh, my. So there we were sitting in the doctor's office over 30 years ago. And the doctor is telling us that our developing child is just fine. Having lost 2 infants earlier, we were a high-risk pregnancy, and that meant a lot of extra visits and extra stuff like amniocentesis. I was there when they extracted the fluid, which is rather dramatic with its long needle and all that. Now we were getting the report, and the doctor asked us if we wanted to know our baby's gender. And I said, well, judging from the chromosome map on that page you have, I think it's going to be a boy. They call them Y chromosomes for a reason. It looked like a Y. This is my third sermon on fathering, and this has been harder than mothering because, well, fathers are different from mothers, but exactly how and why is really hard to pin down. With the exception of gestation and nursing, there is nothing a male cannot do and has not done for a child. And does that part that happens so much at the beginning, the gestation and the nursing, mean that everything after that is mothering or fathering? It's just hard. Why then are fathers different, if they are? 2 weeks ago on this journey, I cited a study by an anthropologist who argues that fathers are what make human children human, with their willingness to do those things you mentioned, Katie, to let us fall down rather than keep us from falling down, with their rough and tumble ways, because the anthropologist said that helps develop qualities of creativity and resilience and curiosity that we do not see in our primate cousins, because the mothers don't do that and the fathers aren't there. Last week, I noted that old trope of boys, perhaps even girls, wanting to be like their dads, and that dads are role models whether they try to be or not. And no doubt that is partly true, even at my age, with my father dead now for 23 years. I find myself admiring his fortitude and intelligence and maturity, and still wondering if I will ever measure up to his example. I'm sure there are plenty of sons and a few daughters asking that question even now. Each time I have touched upon gender norms and expectations, asking if a male parent offers something a female parent does not. And the answer I've come up with is something so odd that you will wobble your heads and blink. Dads are queer. And I'm using that term in its new form, meaning a person who was neither entirely male nor entirely female. To be accurate, then, men are, as we now say, genderqueer. And if this aspect alone seems bizarre, I have some talking to do. Not being a woman, I am not privy to the cultural education women get from their fellow females. I am quite familiar, though, with the way men and boys are transfixed by their desire to be real men. I was maybe 7 at the time in a tumbling class at a YMCA when I fell and hit my head, and I hit it hard, and I began to cry, and the counselor, a high school ager, came over to me and said, "Boys, don't cry." And right then I learned not to cry in public. And when I did, to feel unmanly if I did. Do girls get that advice? To cry, not to cry? I don't know, but virtually every boy I knew it was wrong to be caught crying. At 11, I wanted to join the Boy Scouts, in part to do all those boy things my dad didn't care to do. I admired him, you bet, but I wanted to learn things like how to use an axe and shoot a gun and be in the woods, and Dad simply wasn't interested, so I joined. But why did I want that if my father didn't offer it? Was the culture teaching me those were things a man should do? To this day, I remember being a pretty good street football quarterback with a killer spiral. Why do I still remember that? Even though I played a season of high school football and it was dreadful from front to back, I still am glad I could throw a good pass. Most men my age get a firm education from the men and older boys around them on what it takes to be a man. That involved being told to be tough, to be brave, and to be strong. We looked at Charles Atlas ads in the comic books and wished we had the $5 to buy his book so we could build muscles and look like him. We played at soldiering and policing, including dramatic death scenes when we would say, "Oh, you got me," and we would fall over in a dramatic heap. No boy over the age of 7 did not know that real men were all men, he-men, red-blooded, American, brave, and nothing like girls at all. Negative ideas always involve being like a girl in some way. If men offered firm handshakes, those who didn't were called what? Limp-wristed. We dreaded being called pansies or sissies. Over time, we learned that these were traits of men. Now we call them gay men. We didn't use that term then. We didn't even know the other bad word until round 10 or 11, when suddenly we knew it was awful, even though we didn't know exactly what it meant. Nothing could be more insulting to a boy than to be called that by your friends, because they were, to our young minds back then, the very opposite of a real man. But not until adulthood. I was in my 20s at the very earliest when a phrase from Shakespeare came to mind. You may remember it. Methinks he doth protest too much. To be accurate, from the play, which comes from Hamlet, the line is, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. And it was said by a woman about another woman. But we all know what it means. That a strenuous affirmation of yes means a desperate denial of no. In this case, I began to wonder if one reason men are so intent on being red-blooded he-men is because we're not quite sure we can be all man, any of us. And I mean that literally. And this is where that genderqueer thing comes in. Okay, I've set it up for you now. Put it up on the tee, now I'm going to hit at it. Genetically, we are all, meaning men, no more than half guy. We have two defining chromosomes, the X and the Y. And here's the deal. There are some men with two X's and some men with only one Y. But all of us, every male, has an X chromosome, which is the girl chromosome, isn't it? Now, my science is pretty spotty, but my point is that there are no all male men at all. To be male is to be 50% girl, at least. And we know it. We guys know that. If not consciously, in a kind of gut level that makes us try a little too hard to get our maleness on top of our femaleness. In essence, every time we boast and swagger, every time we brag and do our male thing, we're saying, pay no attention to that X behind the curtain. While we're puffing smoke and letting out fire. More importantly, and why this is a sermon and not just a promotion, this fundamental insecurity males have about their maleness is the seed from which patriarchy has grown for untold generations. We males, I think, are terrified of anything that blurs the distinction between male and female. Something so old that it's right there in all those ancient scriptures. For example, there are lots of rules in the Bible that tell us to maintain those boundaries between girls and boys. And that includes those verses about homosexuality. It's because they make boys look like they're being girls and girls like they're being boys, and that's wrong. Because there are also verses that forbid cross-dressing. There are verses that make it very clear that women are subordinate to men financially, economically, religiously. But you see, no matter how hard the Bible tries to make women secondary, lesser than, it still comes back that it's ambiguous in the first place. You all know, or most of you know those stories in Genesis, right at the beginning about the creation of human beings. There are actually two separate accounts where it says the earth was without form and void. The first act God commits is the act of separating the light from the dark. Then the day from the night, the sky from the earth, water from land. God makes sure everything is well defined, separated, and there's no ambiguity whatsoever. This is what guys do. We want to make sure you're there and we're here. Here's the line and don't cross it. And that applies to everything. So controlling the world is part of controlling our own male anxiety that we are out of control. We are busy trying to avoid that X chromosome getting too busy, so we put it in its place. We put everything else in its place. If we don't separate everything into the right places, there'll be nothing but chaos. The male need to be separate from the female, the need to have power over others, is fundamentally about our male anxiety about our not quite maleness. Before I move on, it is worth noting that even in the Bible, again, with all of its profound patriarchy, there is another gender ambiguous story. Remember I just told you about how God separates? Well, at the sixth day, God creates humankind. And people say, well, isn't it man? No, the word is Adam, which is not the Hebrew word for man. The Hebrew word for man is Ish. So what is Adam? It's the word for dirt, soil. You know that post you have in your courtyard over there where it says, may peace prevail on earth? The Hebrew ends with the word ha-adam, earth, soil. And God created humankind from the soil. And then God did what? Breathed the Spirit into the person. Anyone remember that story? Now, if the first person was named Adam, meaning dirt, the breath of life, chaya, is the basis for the word chava, which is Eve. We could not have a human being, even in the Bible, unless male and female were put together. Do you understand what I'm saying? The man could not be a person without Eve. We men need our Eve to be alive. You could say that God breathed Eve into Adam. And that's when it says in the scripture, and he became a living soul. So even despite all the patriarchy that's out there, there is still this reality we sense that every man is part woman. Now, I'm a long way from the whole fathering thing, but bear with me here. This gender ambiguity is still present today. It's justified by religion even now. And because of religion and history and culture and so much more, it permeates all of our lives. If you do not see it, gentlemen, it means you've closed your female eye to reality. Just as so many white Americans are always telling black Americans, you're being overly sensitive, when in reality, you're just not looking hard enough. Patriarchy and racism really are everywhere, whether we see them or not. These past weeks, we've watched the unfolding investigation into the travesty of the January 6th attack. It failed coup, thank goodness. And we remember, if we think hard, how many of them were men wearing military garb with their war paint on. Literally, some of them wearing war paint, brandishing weapons, all manner of male symbols of power. We know that it was an organization called the Proud Boys who organized it. You could smell the testosterone right through the screen. Is it merely coincidental that many for whom that attack is still a righteous act are also as fervent about the Second Amendment, determined to end abortion, believe trans folk are a threat to women in sport and in bathrooms? They all truck together, people. They all do. And why? Because they are protesting too much that their maleness is being overrun by femaleness. And look at the damage they're doing to themselves, to us. in this effort to exercise a continuing male dominance, which really should be over themselves, not you or me. Alas, that doesn't work for me. I am, as they used to say on Saturday Night Live, a girly man. And nor am I inclined to pump myself up with anger and righteousness. It doesn't work for me. But you see, I'm a girly man, and I'm okay with that. I'm proud of my girly man. Because my ex, and I got one, I know it, is my mother, and I get to keep her for the rest of my life. She is my fragment of Eve, that bit of original spirit that I get to keep. Why would I want to deny that part of myself? If the myth has any meaning, my Adam needs my Eve to be complete. So why deny it? Why fight it? Why fear half of myself? What a waste of life. What a waste of my being to be in retreat from half of who I am. And that's why I'm preaching this on Father's Day. Because I'm telling all you dads, all you identified males, it's time to get your girl on. Grab your inner mom, your woman self, that part of you that you are entitled to own that makes you the man that you are. Because if being all man means being all that you can be, to quote the Army, how can you be that without being all the woman you are as well? To own it. To be okay with it. And I don't mean that culturally. I mean from a gender point of view, you're both. We're both genders, guys. How cool is that? Okay, guys, and I'm speaking to my fellow males. You're queer. That's okay. Get over it. You will not be less of a man by being half a woman. In fact, you will be more than you were before. Anyone here know Jonathan Larson's show, Rent? Yeah. In it, one of the characters quotes someone else from long ago when a gay guy is confronted by a straight guy, and the gay guy says, "I'm more man than you'll ever be and more woman than you'll ever have." And that's possible for every male on the planet. If you want to be more of a man, be more of a woman. Own all of yourself. Do not be ashamed of the part of you that wants to be your mom or your sister or your grandmother. And if you have kids, that means bring that part with you to your parenting. So I need you to do that, guys. Be all that you are, not just part of who you are, because our kids deserve us guys to be all the guy we are, including the girl that we brought to the prom when we were born. Get your girl on, boys. The world needs us to be all that we can be. With that in mind, and that cheeky quality of my sermon done, I'm going to invite my fellow girl, Katie Seifert, to show us the way through our final hymn this morning.
Thank you, Reverend Fred. What a great sermon. It reminds me of Brene Brown's latest research, who is a professor, and yep, I see some other hands. Maybe you were thinking the same thing I was. She's a professor, researcher, and lecturer known for doing research on vulnerability, shame, and leadership, and recently just published a book, Atlas of the Heart, which in her research found that we have 87 emotions as part of the human experience, many of which we don't have language for. And in her research, we found there's been a school of thought that we are thinking beings who occasionally have emotions, but what the research shows is that we are emotional beings who occasionally think. So, in our last closing hymn, this is a song that highlights a couple of those different human experiences. And by the way, the research didn't show a difference between genders. So, we all are here having that human experience. And please stand in body or in spirit to sing our last hymn, I've Got Peace Like a River, and many other emotional human experiences. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul.
Be ours of faith, which like sunshine goes everywhere, and like the rain brings life and hope and nourishment to times of dryness in the soul. And let us be present to the sky with its brilliant sun and the driving power of the stars to lead us through the night. And with that in mind, Roz, would you come and help us extinguish this chalice so we can get on with our lives?
Oops, sorry about that. I just want to thank Reverend Fred, because I often say to my husband that I feel very, very blessed to have married a very nurturing man, and I get the best of man and woman in one being. So it resonated a lot with me today. So if you will, please join me as we extinguish the chalice. Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and work in the world with compassion until we meet again. Let it be so. Go in peace, my friends. Go in peace.